You're about to learn something most people will never admit, not out loud, not even to themselves. Your sexual thoughts are not random, your fantasies are not accidents, and the desire you try to control is already controlling you, not because you're weak, but because you were never taught how to understand it. You were taught to feel guilty. To distract yourself. To either act it out, or bury it. But Carl Jung warned about this exact mistake that he said the moment you repress sexual energy, it doesn't disappear, it descends into your unconscious, into your shadow, and from there, it begins to shape your choices, your relationships, and your identity, silently. This is why some desires feel obsessive, why attraction can feel irrational, why certain fantasies return no matter how much discipline you think you have. This video is not about sex the way the internet talks about it. It's about why your mind uses sexuality as a language, because what you call desire is often something deeper, a wound. Asking to be seen, that a missing part of yourself trying to return, that a psychological fire that, when ignored, turns destructive, but when understood, becomes power. Jung believed libido wasn't just sexual. It was the raw energy of life itself, the same force behind ambition, creativity, intimacy, and transformation. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. If you don't consciously meet this energy, you will unconsciously project it, onto women, onto relationships, onto fantasies, onto obsession. You won't chase people. You'll chase yourself, reflected in them. In this video, you'll discover why repression creates your sexual shadow, why attraction is often projection, not chemistry, why your fantasies are psychological messages, not moral failures, and how sexual energy becomes destructive only when it's misunderstood. If you've ever felt ashamed of what you desire, if you've ever wondered why sex has so much power over your mood, focus, and sense of self, stay, not to be judged, not to be fixed, but to finally understand what your unconscious has been trying to tell you, because the part of you were taught to hide is often the part carrying your greatest truth, and once you see it clearly, it stops controlling you from the shadows. It becomes yours. Let's begin. To understand why this force holds such sway over you, we have to first dismantle the lie you have been told since childhood. You were raised in a world that split you in two. There was the civilized you, the polite you, the one who follows rules and seeks approval. And then there was the animal you, the instinctual you, the one who wants, who hungers, who feels things that are not polite and certainly not civilized. You were taught that the first version of you is the real you, and the second version is a mistake, a sin, or a biological glitch that needs to be managed. But Carl Jung saw it differently. He understood that sexuality is not just a biological function designed for reproduction or pleasure. It is the most direct manifestation of psychic energy. He called it libido, but he did not mean it in the limited, purely erotic sense that Freud did. For Jung, libido was the appetite for life itself. It is the urge to create, to connect, to merge, to transcend boundaries. It is the fuel of the psyche. When you look at it this way, you realize that your sexual drive is actually your drive for wholeness. It is the part of you that refuses to be alone, separate, and stagnant. But when this massive river of energy is dammed up by shame, by fear, or by societal conditioning, it does not dry up. It floods. It seeps into the basement of your mind, into the dark corners where you do not look. This is the creation of the sexual shadow. The shadow is everything you are, but refuse to acknowledge. It is the repository of your unlived life. And when your sexual nature is relegated to the shadow, it changes. It mutates. Pure, healthy desire, when repressed, turns into obsession. The simple need for connection, when denied, twists into a desperate need for validation. The urge to surrender, when fought against, becomes a fantasy of being overpowered. The shadow is not evil, it is simply the part of you that is starving. And a starving animal will eat anything. This is why repressed people often have the darkest fantasies or the most chaotic relationships. It is not because they are bad people. It is because the energy they have buried is clawing its way back to the surface, demanding to be fed. Think about the times you have felt a desire that seemed to come from nowhere, a sudden, overwhelming pull toward a specific person or a specific act. You might have judged yourself for it. You might have thought, where did this come from? This isn't me. But Jung would say, this is absolutely you. It is the part of you that you have locked away. The intensity of the craving is a measure of how long you have been disconnected from that part of yourself. The more you push it down, the more pressure builds. And eventually, that pressure will find a release valve. Sometimes it comes out as addiction. Sometimes it comes out as self-sabotage. Sometimes it comes out as a projection onto someone else. Let's talk about that projection, because this is where most people get lost in the labyrinth of love and lust. You meet someone. And suddenly, the world shifts. They seem to glow with a light that you cannot explain. You feel an irresistible magnetic pull. You tell yourself it is chemistry. You tell yourself it is fate. You tell yourself that this person is the answer to a question you didn't know you were asking. But Jung offered a more sobering, yet ultimately more liberating explanation. He suggested that you are not falling in love with a person. You are falling in love with a projection. Inside every man, there is a feminine structure called the anima. Inside every woman, there is a masculine structure called the animus. These are the archetypes of the soul, the contrasexual elements that hold the emotional and spiritual qualities we do not consciously embody. If you are a man who has disconnected from his own emotional depth, his own intuition, his own capacity for softness and flow, you will not simply lose those qualities. You will project them onto a woman. You will see her not as she is, but as a carrier of your own missing soul. She will seem magical to you because she is holding the missing piece of your own psyche. This is why the attraction feels so irrational and so consuming. You are chasing your own wholeness, reflected in the mirror of another person. You are like Narcissus, staring into the pool, not realizing that the beautiful image you see is actually yourself. But because you think it is them, you become obsessed. You think, if I can just possess this person, if I can just merge with them, I will finally feel complete. And for a moment, in the height of infatuation or sexual union, you do feel complete. But it doesn't last. Because the other person is not a screen for your movie. They are a human being with their own flaws, their own shadow, and their own needs. Eventually, the projection shatters. The goddess becomes a woman. The savior becomes a man. And when the magic fades, you are left with two choices: you can blame them for changing, or you can wake up. This is the painful gift of sexual projection. It shows you exactly what you need to integrate within yourself. If you are obsessed with someone who is cold and distant, you are likely projecting your own inability to be intimate with yourself. If you are obsessed with someone who is wild and chaotic, you are likely projecting your own repressed need for freedom. The person you desire is a map. They are showing you the territory of your own soul that you have yet to explore. Instead of chasing them, Jung invites you to chase the feeling they evoke in you. To ask, what is this person carrying for me that I am too afraid to carry for myself? Now, we must go deeper, into the place that carries the most shame for the most people, the realm of fantasy. This is where you are most naked, not just physically, but psychologically. Society tells you that your fantasies are just dirty thoughts, random firing of neurons, or evidence of your moral corruption. But from a Jungian perspective, a fantasy is a symbolic drama. It is a play being performed on the stage of your mind, attempting to resolve a conflict that your conscious mind cannot handle. Your mind uses sexuality as a metaphor. It takes abstract emotional needs and translates them into physical acts. If you have a fantasy about power, about dominating or controlling someone, it is rarely because you are a tyrant. It is often because, in your daily life, you feel powerless. You feel at the mercy of your boss, your bills, your obligations, or your own emotions. Your psyche compensates for this helplessness by creating a scenario where you are in total control, where your will is absolute. The sexual pleasure is just the bait, the real satisfaction is the psychological relief of reclaiming your power. Conversely, if you have a fantasy about submission, about being taken, bound, or rendered helpless, it is not because you are weak. It is often because you are exhausted. You are tired of being the responsible one, the one who holds it all together, the one who has to make all the decisions. Your soul craves a moment of rest. It craves a space where you can lay down the burden of your own autonomy and just exist. The fantasy of submission is a fantasy of surrender. It is a wish to return to a state of total trust, to be held by a force larger than yourself. It is, in a strange and distorted way, a spiritual longing. Even the darker, more taboo fantasies carry a message. The desire for something forbidden is often a desire to break out of the cage of your own conditioning. If you have lived your whole life trying to be good, trying to be perfect, trying to please everyone, your shadow will generate fantasies of being bad, of breaking rules, of defiling the sacred. This is not because you are evil. It is because you are suffocating. Your psyche is screaming for air. It is screaming for the freedom to be something other than the polished, perfect image you present to the world. When you look at your fantasies through this lens, the shame begins to dissolve. You stop asking, "What is wrong with me?" and you start asking, "What is my soul trying to balance?" You realize that the images in your head are not indictments, they are information. They are diagnostic tools pointing you toward your own unhealed wounds. The person who was neglected as a child may fantasize about being the center of attention in a sexual context, not out of narcissism, but out of a desperate, ancient need to be seen. The person who was shamed for their body may fantasize about being worshipped, not out of ego, but out of a need to heal the rift between their spirit and their flesh. This brings us to the most critical part of this understanding, the potential for destruction versus the potential for transformation. Sexual energy is fire. There is no getting around that. Fire can burn your house down, or it can cook your food and keep you warm. It depends entirely on how you handle it. When this energy is misunderstood, when it is left in the shadow, it becomes destructive. It fuels addictions to pornography, to casual sex that leaves you feeling emptier than before, to toxic relationships that cycle through the same pain over and over again. It creates a split in the soul where you are one person during the day and a completely different, shame-filled person at night, but when this energy is understood, it becomes the engine of your evolution. Jung spoke of the alchemical process, the transformation of lead into gold. In psychological terms, this means taking the heavy, dark, repressed material of the shadow and integrating it into the light of consciousness. It means admitting to yourself what you want. It means owning your desires without necessarily acting on them compulsively. It means accepting that you are a complex being capable of both immense light and immense darkness. When you stop fighting your sexual nature, you stop being controlled by it. You develop what is called holding capacity. You can feel the surge of desire, the pull of the fantasy, the heat of the projection, and you can stay present with it. You don't have to repress it, and you don't have to indulge it. You can just let it be. You can observe it. You can say, "Ah, I see you. I see that hunger. I know where that comes from." In that moment of observation, you are no longer the slave. You are the master. This is where sex becomes spiritual. Not in a religious, dogmatic sense, but in the sense of spirit, the breath of life. The mystics of all traditions have always known that the longing for union with the beloved is a reflection of the longing for union with the divine. When you are in the throes of deep passion, the ego dissolves. The constant chatter of the mind stops. For a brief moment, you are not a separate self worrying about the past or the future. You are pure presence. You are pure sensation. You are pure life. This is why sex is so addictive. It is the cheapest and fastest way for the average person to experience a state of no mind, a state of transcendence, but if you only seek that transcendence through the body, you will always be hungry, because the body is finite. The invitation of Jungian psychology is to take that erotic energy and let it rise. Let it fuel your creativity. Let it fuel your art. Let it fuel your ambition to build a life that matters. Freud said sublimation was a defense mechanism, a way to avoid sex. Jung saw it differently. He saw it as the natural evolution of the energy. Just as a plant takes the raw nutrients from the dirt and transforms them into a flower, the human psyche is designed to take the raw drive of instinct and transform it into culture, into meaning, into love. Real intimacy, then, is not just two bodies rubbing together to create friction and release. Real intimacy is two nervous systems, two souls, meeting without masks. It is the ability to show your shadow to another person and have them not turn away. It is the ability to see their shadow and not run. It is a sacred contract where we agree to be mirrors for each other's growth. When you approach sex from this place, it ceases to be a performance. It ceases to be a way to prove your worth or secure your validation. It becomes a communion. But you cannot have that kind of intimacy with another until you have it with yourself. You cannot embrace someone else's darkness if you are still running from your own. This is why the work begins in the silence of your own mind. It begins by looking at the things you have labeled disgusting or wrong and bringing them into the light of compassion. It begins by forgiving yourself for the ways your survival instincts have twisted your desires. You were doing the best you can with the tools you had. You were trying to find water in a desert. You were trying to feel something in a numbing world. So, how do we move forward? How do we integrate this shadow? We start by stopping the war. You stop fighting your thoughts. You stop shaming your body. You realize that every impulse has a positive intention at its core. Even the darkest urge is trying to get a need met, a need for safety, for power, for connection, for aliveness. Once you identify the need, you can find healthier, more conscious ways to meet it. If you need power, take charge of your life, your career, your body. If you need surrender, find a spiritual practice or a creative outlet where you can let go of control. If you need connection, practice vulnerability with safe people. You take the energy out of the unconscious fantasy and you channel it into conscious living. This is the path of the individuated human. It is not a path of celibacy, nor is it a path of hedonism. It is the middle path of awareness. It is walking through the fire without being consumed. It is realizing that the monster you feared was never a monster at all, it was just a frightened, hungry part of you waiting for you to come home. The world we live in wants to keep you unconscious. It wants to sell you sex as a product, as a distraction, as a drug. It wants you to be hooked on the dopamine hit, forever chasing the next high, forever feeling empty. To step out of that cycle is a revolutionary act. To reclaim your sexual energy as your own, to understand it, to honor it, and to direct it, this is true sovereignty. It requires courage. It requires the willingness to feel uncomfortable. It requires you to look in the mirror and see not just the hero, but the villain, the lover, the tyrant, and the saint, and to say, I am all of this. Because you are. You are vast. You contain multitudes. And the energy that pulses through your veins, the energy that wakes you up in the middle of the night, the energy that pulls you toward beauty and chaos, that is the very stuff of life. Do not fear it. Learn its language. When you do this, the shame evaporates. You realize there was never anything to be ashamed of. There was only something to be understood. You become a vessel for the energy rather than a victim of it. You become capable of a love that is deep, fierce, and real, because it is not based on an illusion. It is based on the truth of who you are. This journey into the shadow is not easy, but it is the only journey worth taking. Because on the other side of that darkness is your light. On the other side of that repression is your freedom. And on the other side of that fear is the love you have been searching for in everyone else, waiting patiently for you to find it in yourself. That if you have recognized yourself in these words, if you have felt the resonance of a truth you have long suspected but never spoken, then this is your invitation. Do not let this just be another video you watch and forget. Let it be the start of a conversation with your own soul. Pay attention to your dreams tonight. Pay attention to the subtle pulls of your attraction tomorrow. Pay attention to the fantasies that drift through your mind. Do not judge them. Just watch them. Ask them what they want. Ask them what they know. The integration of your sexual shadow is the key to unlocking your full potential, not just as a sexual being, but as a human being. It is the source of your charisma, your drive, and your capacity to affect the world. When you are no longer leaking energy in the form of shame and repression, you have all of that power available to you to build, to create, to love, and to live. The shadows are only scary when we refuse to look at them. When we turn on the light of awareness, we see that they are just parts of the room we haven't visited in a while. It is time to reclaim the whole house. It is time to stop living in just one room of your psyche. It is time to inhabit your whole self. Take a moment now to feel the weight of this. Feel the relief of knowing you are not broken. Feel the possibility of a life where you are not at war with your own nature. It is possible. It is waiting. And it begins with a single choice, the choice to stop hiding. That if you are ready to stop running from your shadow and start owning your truth, if you are ready to understand the language of your own soul, then you are in the right place. There is so much more to explore, so many deeper layers to uncover. The mind is an infinite landscape, and we have only just scratched the surface. That I want you to take one small action today. It's a simple click, but it signals to your unconscious that you are ready for more. Click the subscribe button. Join us as we go deeper into the psychology of the self, into the mysteries of the mind, and into the art of becoming whole. Do not let the algorithm decide your growth. Choose it for yourself. Subscribe, and let's continue this work together. Your shadow is waiting to be transformed into your greatest ally. Let's begin.